CAD 911, please state the nature of your emergency.
I have
I am.
this here, or if you want to share your screen, either way,
No,
I
this would
can,
be great.
I can do that, and then you just tell me where to go. There's down the left is the pages.
Yeah.
So if you tell me, and then we can talk about it, that would be cool.
Yeah. Well, we'll take this sheet, for example.
Okay.
Look at all the open space that this sheet has and how small the little collections are of data. And this is really consistent when I look at plans. And I don't criticize, anybody for doing what they do, but this is such a waste of space in my mind that I have to, you know, why isn't that table bigger? Why doesn't it just take up that whole side? And why don't we scoot this drawing index thing over to the side? And why don't we just expand some of this stuff? And I don't know why not. Why is the house so small on the sheet? So that's all layout stuff. And I have this hang up. I have this hang up with rough openings. And the more I think about rough openings, the more I realize that it's really about everything. Even if you were going to buy a car and you were going to drive it through your already completed garage door, you're going to test the rough opening of your garage door to see if your car is actually going to fit. And can you fit two of them? Can you fit one? What are you going to do?
Mhm.
So when I look at a sheet like this, and then it's got 12 sheets. There's 12 sheets in a plan. Why do we have to have 12 sheets? Does it have to be that way? And if you're going to have a sheet that doesn't have any space on it, and you have a sheet that has too much crap on it, why don't we, pull that stuff? And you could probably speak into that stuff.
I
But
will. I will, but
yeah,
not
first
now.
and foremost, that'd be one of the things when I look at a sheet like this, and I look at the layout, and I just think, can you please help me here? I'm getting older. I can't see some of this stuff.
I totally get what you're saying. Like this guy's using some kind of pretend handwritten font,
Hmm.
and that's just an artistic decision. And to me personally, I don't buy it. Like his table of R406, that's all whatever came straight out of the code book,
Hmm.
Arial, whatever, Helvetica
Yeah, I don't
Neon.
think energy code credits belong on the first page. I think the first page is introducing you to the project.
Yep, exactly.
There's nothing to defend here. This is our project. This is what it consists of. It's this many square feet. That kind of stuff needs to go on here so that you know what you're getting into. I like
Yep.
the
So
first page to introduce me to the job.
I've seen some really good plans where the first page lists all the utilities in case you cut one.
Yeah.
It lists the local police, fire department, you name it. There's a big long list. The engineer on record, all these people.
Hmm.
So you have a directory. It's actually a
Yeah.
useful page,
100%.
you know?
Yeah. That would give you everything you need right here. So now I'm prepared to look at my job. I want to move into my first page. What is the next page?
Looks like a site
Yeah.
plan
So we
or
have a site plan. And again, look at all this text on the left-hand side here. That could be broken up into two columns, or it could be broken up into three different pieces that make it easier to deal with, you
yeah,
know?
because that's a lot of reading.
Hmm.
And back when I was a full-time framer, I'd kind of look at a couple of these and go, "Oh, framing. Okay, I'd read that." And then, oh, the rest of this crap, I don't care. But
Hmm.
there might be stuff in the energy code that I need to know.
Well, if you're a manager, that's exactly what's going on. I have to read every one of those headings and I have to understand at least a basic level, what is this all gonna, how's it gonna affect me and how am I gonna manage the job to
Yep.
reduce the effect of that to a point where nobody notices, but we get it done anyhow. But
Exactly.
but yeah, but when it's like this, it's really hard to consume because everything looks like it's one long sentence. It's
Yep.
spaced and it's got some indent, but it looks like it's just one long sentence
Yep.
because there's no, you know, you could delineate a few of those things. You could even put a header and say this is going to be, like a general specifications, and then it could be framing specifications, then it can
Yeah.
be engineering specifications, and
So he did mechanical and plumbing and they're
mhm,
underlined, but they don't stand out.
no.
So that they don't
And you could
seem like
separate those three across the page and still have room for your site plan.
yep.
And this is just another thing where people what happens, the effect of this in my experience is that they'll go, oh, the general specifications, I know all those already. I'm not reading that again. And that's
Yeah.
not true.
No.
It's not true at all. You're going on a new project. This project starts today. It's
Yep.
not the last 15 years of your life. This one starts today. And if we don't, if you don't facilitate somebody's curiosity, and make them want to be a part of it, then they're going to screw up. There's going to be mistakes. They're going to happen. There's just no two ways about it.
Yep. When I'm really
You know,
tired and lazy, I want my boilerplate stuff and I just go, it's good enough. And then I stop and I go, wait a second. There's stuff in here that doesn't even apply to this project.
hmm
So let
that's
me go
right.
through and fix it. And
Do a little bit
I've
of filtering.
you can tell on some of my older plans that I didn't really read all this because there's spelling mistakes that I never caught ever. And
Mm-hmm.
just not even a month or two ago, I copied and pasted all into AI and I said, hey, reword this to make sense.
Mm-hmm.
And it caught spelling errors and it explained things. It was really good.
Oh, dude.
I'm impressed with AI
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah. You know, like
But
this legend thing too. It's way off to the left. And it feels so disconnected from the site plan.
well,
To
you
me,
know
the
what's
legend
weird?
should be in the upper right hand corner where the arrow is for north and south.
Yeah, here's another thing. Your binding on paper is on the left, and so you'd have to open the page all the way up just to read this
Yeah,
stuff.
just to get to that.
Yep.
100%. So I feel like, these kinds of things, these layout things, I think they are all stock.
And there might have been more over here. I took off the title block, so it may be a little wider, but I think this is exactly inside the drawing window.
Yeah, if the title block was on there, you'd still have the same frame that you would have to deal with in order to present this information.
Yep. I'm
It'd be a
finding
wider
interesting
sheet.
um, why I would 13 foot 3 and 5/16. I'm not understanding that or 3/16. Maybe that's exactly where his line is. But if this house hasn't been built yet, then adjust things so that they're whole numbers or half-inch numbers. You know,
hmm
it just
Yeah, I
seems
would
odd.
rather they were whole numbers on the site plan.
Yeah, nobody's gonna pull a tape and go, "Oh, hold on, I gotta how many? One, two, three." Start counting
Yeah.
ticks.
Well, a lot of times when we get on site, I have to move things because my utilities aren't where you expected them to be when you drew the site plan. So
Yep.
I have to deal with the 15 feet and the 5 feet, whichever the setbacks are, the 35 feet in the front. We have to stay inside that envelope, but sometimes I need to have the luxury of just moving it over a couple inches so I can make something work a little better. And when I look at something like this, where it's to the quarter inch or sometimes to the 16th, it just feels like somebody is not recognizing that we need flexibility in all of this. Go into your settings and give us the room we need
Yep.
to do the job that we need to do because I can't put the house where you want it. I can't hit that number. It's not going to
Yep.
happen.
And that's what's nice about the whole building industry. As the builder, you can redline anything and make adjustments on the fly.
hmm
And it's totally legit because you're the actual eyes on the ground. So whatever the theoretical was no longer is valid.
Yeah.
So let's go to this page.
Yeah. See, that's all the same thing.
It's small,
And
isn't it?
yeah. And it's frustrating that all this detail is stacked like this. And I get it. When you're doing stuff, you do the same thing all the time. You got five or six of these things going. You don't want to look at everything and try to analyze how it should be done. So I'm not criticizing. And as a matter of fact, I'm a great friend of the guy that drew this. But this little thing comes up on plans so often where it's too hard to read all that stuff when it's stacked like that. And in my
So
opinion, it can be on both sides. There's got to be a better way to do it.
I'm going to show you, where is it here? So this is the actual, I'm on a 43-inch monitor. So I
Okay.
just told it to go act. So this is actually what a sheet of paper would look like. That's how big the letters are.
hmm
But fortunately for us, we can also go like this. And this is what we were talking about with people having a PDF. I noticed the 8 and 12 was upside down. So my assumption is it used to be over here. And then he mirrored it over to this side. And somehow it didn't keep the numbers correct. Because I've
Right.
seen that app. AutoCAD will do that sometimes in the old days.
hmm
But
But
I
when
do
I
like,
look at it, I'm like, guy, this dude's just blowing through this job. He's just blowing through it. How come he's not paying attention to this? Because when you're out there framing, and this is the thing about what you do to the plans. When you convert the plans into a framing set, you take care of all of this stuff, and you make a plan that a framer could grab and go do his job with.
yeah, like
Instead of
I hate drawing elevations, but they're automated now. And I'm just going to let everybody know the little secret. Your software, if you got good software, does all this all by itself. And then all you got to do is dimension it, and you don't even have to dimension it. All this is
Hmm.
automated, but the language isn't right unless you name all these pieces correctly, and then it'll capture that.
Mm.
But on this 1 foot overhang, I'm looking at, okay, how far am I going for my overhang? That has to be somewhere. If it's not on your section view, it has to be on your elevation. And I love section views way more than elevations because section views I could build the house from.
Hmm.
Elevations, they'll be like, okay, so I got an 8 and 12 here, and I got an 8 and 12 here. So that's a 45 valley. 8 and 12 here, 6 and 12 here. Okay, so that's what I do. When I see a set
Hmm.
of plans, first thing I do is I start at the roof and I go to the roof plan and I look down and I go, okay, is everything point loaded? Because I got to know.
Hmm.
Because if I'm building the first floor walls and I didn't stop to check to make sure I needed to have beam support somewhere, I could catch it early on the plans and then tell the architect, engineer, whoever, and say, hey, look at this ridge. It has a brace here, but I don't see any way of it being braced down. What was your thoughts? And then maybe they'll just throw a header in here and put it into walls somehow, and boom, done.
Hmm. Yeah.
I
So when I
can't
use
make
an
that call, but
elevation, when I'm framing, I use the elevation to orient myself and how I'm going to lay things out. So doors are on top of, windows on top of doors, windows on top of windows. I want to know like where my
alignment.
exterior walls. Yeah, I want to work
I
on
got you.
alignment because when I get ready to lay out, I want to make sure I lay out around my toilets. I want to lay out around my plumbing. If I can think of ways to keep things stacked so all my nails are in one
Oops,
line
my bad.
and they're not scattered all over the building, then I know that the subcontractors are going to do better. So that's what I use elevations for, is to kind of wrap my head around how things are going to stack.
Let me.
But one of the things on that elevation, I always kind of it cracks me up that he has the little triangle thing, to show you pitch, and he got the numbers wrong on that one. And then he wrote 8 and 12 pitch on the other two roofs, and I understand that that needs to be noted, but it seems to me that some
Well,
of
it's
these things could be under a UNO, unless otherwise noted. You could
yes.
just put a comment, down here, unless otherwise noted, all roofs 8 and 12 pitch, and then just
Yep.
put the pitch on the roofs that are not 8 and 12,
Yep. You could do that.
and then get that text all in one place instead of having it all over the place. And the reason I say that is I feel like when I start looking around for information and I realize that it's kind of all over the place, I start thinking, what am I going to miss now? Because I don't know where to look for all this stuff,
Yep.
you know?
That's a scary feeling when you get a really complex house, and if the guy's good, you can. Well, you need a bird's eye roof plan,
Hmm.
all with a dimension, or I mean a pitch on it. And then that way you can look at it and then look at the elevation and go, oh, okay, so that one's of this pitch and that one's of this pitch. But you need that bird's eye view.
Hmm. I don't think it belongs on the elevation though. I think you
Yeah,
can
like,
make, yeah, you can make comments in this, or whatever you need to do to kind of denote what this elevation represents.
yeah.
But
Well,
if
he
you
could
have
take the
stuff,
text off right
yeah,
here and then just
yeah,
go with the triangles here and then come down and do two triangles. Well, here you got them here. So
yeah, you
really
got
this
one there.
triangle and this triangle, you're done.
Yeah. And he's still got the text on that elevation as well on those roofs.
Yeah. And he already
So
told us, here it is. And he
yeah, and he
told
already
us
told
to,
us.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So then I feel like I'm looking all over the place to try and find information, and whether it's true or not doesn't matter. This is actually what's happening. Is you get this sense of I can't read what I need to know here.
Isn't this where you were doing your elevated deck right here?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So that's an attic truss that right there above the garage windows,
Yeah. With the little
above the
dotted
garage
lines.
doors. Yeah,
Okay.
and that attic truss has a 4 foot 9 inch heel on it, I think.
Oh, way up high.
Yeah. So
Okay.
there's a bottom cord. I think it's a 2 by 10 that goes all the way across, maybe a 2 by 12.
And you
But
were
it
going to
has
do a
this four
door?
and a half foot, knee wall on it. And then there's all this framing that goes in for the webbing on the attic truss, goes into the area where the room is actually going to be built. There's just kind of like three pieces to this attic truss.
Okay.
Um, and I don't think, in my experience, I have not found attic trusses to be convenient. I think that they're economical. And I don't know if they're technically economical if somebody were to break down the amount of work that goes into setting up attic trusses. But I would say that they're the illusion of convenience these things are rife with the illusion of convenience, these attic trusses, because it's not the truth. It just is not the
Yeah.
truth.
There's a lot of on-site adjustment.
Yeah, 100%. You got to do all the blocking. You got to do all your mid-span blocking. And you could do that in your floor if you just frame the floor. And then you have to do all of your web bracing. So you got purlins in your web bracing. Some of the purlins are on only two trusses because of the odd nature of plies, 2-ply, 3-ply, 4-ply attic trusses. And you get into this kind of weird engineering scenario where this one web in this 4-ply truss gets a web brace on it, and you just have to run it up to a diaphragm. And I don't know how many people even understand that correctly because I we fail that all the time. But that kind of stuff can be taken care of if you live in a more prescriptive environment where you do things that are just common and normal, and not
Yeah,
get
like they
into a
did 50 years
situation.
ago.
Yeah, and not get into a situation where you have this illusion of convenience, and
So
it's not true.
I'm looking at this end view where you see my cursor spinning,
Hmm.
and how in Tennessee they did a lot of bonus rooms over garages, and they would just balloon frame all the way up to here, and
Hmm.
then they would run whatever pitch roof. A lot of times it was 12 and 12. And then your floor system ties into that wall and ties into this wall. So the walls can't go anywhere. And you'll have a gable wall here holding this end of the ridge and fire blocking because it's a balloon frame. And but then you get the whole space. You don't just
Yeah,
get
you get the
this
whole
where it
space.
stops right there.
Yeah, because of the structural requirements of the illusion of
Yeah.
convenience.
And you can go with 14-inch like 560 I joists that will span anything. It'll span 30 feet. And you
100%.
you can put in, and then so what, you lost like 2 inches, whatever the bottom cord, maybe they did a 2 by 10, I don't know, whatever. You're coming up to 14 inches, but man, you get all this. You could put a couch
Yeah,
here and not hit your head and still sit
yeah,
down and use that space.
yeah, yeah. Well, it gives you the option. Like I don't have any options here. That room is a certain size because of the what I can get out of the truss, and I
Yep.
can't take that any farther. You know, at a certain point, um, the truss is not self-supporting anymore, so you can't do much beyond a certain point, right? But
It would be
I think,
expensive to re-engineer.
yeah, yeah. And if you go to a truss manufacturer that's actually got a brain and is very conscious about what he's designing, they go with fewer plies and they engineer a better truss. So you're paying for a higher grade lumber, you're paying for a little bigger gang nailers. There are a few things that you're paying extra for, but you're going to get a single ply or a double ply truss that's going to carry as much as a 4 or a 5-ply truss would have if you go to a different manufacturer, somebody who's not so conscious of their effort.
Yeah.
And now people won't pay for that. They won't pay for that convenience of having a lighter truss that's going to do the equivalent amount of work,
Yeah, that
right?
kills me. That
Yeah,
I've framed big, nice bonus rooms. And
yeah.
so
And
when
what
I
you'll see
see that,
later
I go,
on in
what a
here,
waste.
yeah, what you see later on in here is we have some inside interior bone bearing points that I'm suffering the effects of the attic trusses and these interior bearing points because I don't believe, and I don't know this because I'm not smart enough for this, but I don't believe that an attic truss with a bearing point in it is actually engineered for that bearing point. I believe that it's engineered to take care of a certain um, degree of the physical forces. But I don't think that a point load is an attic truss's best friend. That's what I think.
Yeah, let's
So
let's keep going.
yeah,
All right, so floor plans.
yeah. So on the floor plan here, you can see we come in from the garage. I got a little boot bench on the side there, and then we have what like is a pantry going into the kitchen. There you go. So I don't think this is a very good use of space. And when we framed it, you could see, when I saw it on the sheet, I thought, okay, I might be able to tolerate that. But I got 4 doors in this little area, 5 doors. There's 5 doors in this little area, and I don't like that. So
Yeah.
what we decided to do, and what really worked out better, was we pushed the pantry over to the stairwell, and we cut it in half, so it's not 4 feet deep. We only added, I think, 3 feet to the end of the stairwell.
Hmm.
I think. And then we put the door under the stairwell, and our pantry is now under the stairwell. And this whole area where the boot bench is wide open.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So
That
that
probably
opened our
feels
whole
awesome.
kitchen.
Yeah.
Yeah, our kitchen is open now all the way over to the garage door, which is really phenomenal because when we're bringing groceries in and stuff like that, it just flows right into the kitchen.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. And then in the
You
laundry
you
room,
caught that in framing?
no, I caught that in design, but I didn't want to
Okay.
do anything about it until we started framing because I wanted to get a feel for that space from the
Okay.
kitchen all the way to the laundry room.
Cool.
And then we were a little concerned about sound, so we insulated the interior wall, the wall that goes from the master bedroom all the way up to the uh, half bath, and then over to the laundry, and then up to the garage.
Okay. Like
That
right
interior
here.
wall is all insulated, so we took care of any noise issues that way.
Nice.
The rest of the space is exactly as you see it. It flows really well. It's really easy to live in. A master on the main. I redid a tub for the shower for the bathroom here. We were going to do a pass through in the closet. We decided against it. Uh, I'm not sure that those are as easy as people think to get done because you have some electrical requirements and there are some plumbing requirements, and you got to kind of figure out what you're going to do with your wall before you punch a big hole in it. So that went away.
I got this hamper
Um,
pass through.
yeah,
Okay.
and then moving upstairs, this is where some of the things got a little bit bizarre because of the attic trusses. So um, almost everything upstairs got reconfigured or kind of got fudged around because we had all this webbing. We had like these. There's a so the entry door for the ADU. There's a wall to the right there. That's actually five attic trusses laminated
This is
at
the
the
ADU.
entry. Yeah, the ADU. Then there's the entry there.
Oh, right here.
That
Okay. Gotcha.
yeah. So that little storage room didn't actually happen. We weren't able to make that happen when the trusses got in place, and it had a lot to do with how much space that webbing took up, in the final build.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that's just another one of those things where until you get the trusses on site and you roll them and you actually see what you have to do to to facilitate their installation, I think that's the right way to say it.
Well,
You lose a lot of space.
I'm looking at your is this the wall line of where the truss opening into the attic space is? Is this wall here
Yep,
and this wall here?
yep,
Okay.
yep.
So how
That's
do you get
correct.
these done? Did you have to like some kind of because this would be where the truss webbing would be to
Yeah,
support, unless the trusses are sitting on the second floor wall and then they go up, then I got it. Then,
yes, we have
but they
attic
don't.
trusses going both ways. Yep,
Okay.
attic trusses
Wow.
going both ways. So that's why I'm saying when you get up there and you see how much space the webbing actually takes up and how much has to be done to keep the attic trusses in place, things start to change a lot. It doesn't. It almost never comes together the way it's drawn when you have attic trusses, and it's a frustration. It's really a frustration. You have to figure out how to make your tubs fit. You have to figure out how to get your plumbing in there because you can't go through bottom cords. And it's just like it's crazy.
Wow.
So from a layout and rough openings perspective, the an attic truss is a great challenge, but I wouldn't say I don't believe they're a benefit. If I could get away from it, that's one of the things that I find so intriguing about what you do is that you could get me away from things like attic trusses, and you could get me away from these other common elements of construction that don't really make sense when you take a look at them or when you try to challenge their use. You could get away from that if you could run into like somebody that thinks like you do. You could overcome some of these things. If I could come to you with a sensible argument and said I need this, you could easily facilitate
Well,
it.
I'm looking at this, and part of it is how does it look from the outside? But just by looking at this plan, a structural ridge, and then you can stick frame this whole thing, and it could all be
Mm-hmm.
vaulted.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be easy peasy. You just got to point load some stuff, and or load it down onto a beam or something in the floor system that can handle it, and kick it out to where you can take it down to foundation.
Yep.
Um, yeah, I remember you saying one time you were having a problem with a air conditioning handler because it was going up in the attic, but there was a bunch of webs in the way.
Oh
You were
yeah.
like,
Yeah. That was the hood over our island.
that's sad.
Yeah. So we laid this all out. We had the island all laid out. We had the hood laid out. We felt like everything was going to be right. but there was another 5 ply. No, I think that was a 4 ply. But when we laid it out, we were laying it out for one rafter, not 4 rafters. So you go from an inch and a half to 5 inches, right? Or inch and a half to 6 inches or
Oh, that'll
whatever.
take things out of center.
That's what I'm talking about. So we're
Yeah.
trying to get up through the ceiling there, and I was a half inch. Oh, I can't remember exactly. I was enough off that I couldn't be on center. And I had the luxury of being able to think ahead and moving the island over a little bit, but I had to compromise, I had to take some traffic area out so that I could get my island in where it needed to be in order to come through the ceiling, keep everything straight, and get past that attic truss because it came out as a 4 ply or whatever it was. So
Yeah.
these are all the little things when you get into this truss world that you either have to get used to dealing with or you have to be able to think ahead about
So that's
and
time
resolve.
lost. So that
Yeah,
costs money. And sometimes the look you had in mind doesn't work out because you've had to adjust things on the fly.
yeah. And
And
it's guaranteed when you get into attic trusses, it's guaranteed that that'll happen.
and I know you're not being a pessimist. You're just being a realist. You've
I'm being a
seen it
realist. I'm
sometimes.
just telling you. I've been rolling these trusses for years, and every time
Uh,
I'm just like, oh, here we go. Here we
yep.
go. And as a process thinker, I'm looking at my truss as I go through the truss plan meticulously to make sure that I understand where my blocking is going to go, how I'm going to get my bearing in, how I'm going to get it all the way to the foundation. Because it's so important. You can't fail at that. Otherwise, the trusses will fail, and that's not good. That's a catastrophic kind of a thing.
Yep.
So, but
Well, so
we,
you've taught me one thing right now. I'm going to add some language to my plan because a lot of times people just want truss roof. And I've seen designers, they'll draw what they think the trusses are supposed to look like, but they
yes,
don't really know because they don't count. It's the engineered stuff at the vendor, whatever their vendor software is, that's what's going to be the actual roof plan.
yep,
So I don't even waste my time. I just, if it's going to be truss, I do a stick frame roof visual. And then I
hmm,
say, hey, your truss manufacturer, if you go with trusses, they will have engineered truss designs for you. But
yes,
that leaves it where I don't even see that problem. I would never see that your hood's ever going to be a problem because if I stick frame
hmm,
this thing, that's over a floor system. We'd make sure that there was, the joists were set correctly for that. And then
yep.
everything above you could just frame. And so to me, I would never catch that until you call and you go, hey man, I can't get my hood to work. And I'd be like, oh, you got trusses. Oh, my bad.
Yeah.
But
So
I
I'll
didn't.
touch on that. I'll touch on that for just a second. So
Okay.
this is one of the things that if you didn't know trusses or you were aware of trusses, but maybe didn't understand the effect, where your stairwell ends is a truss.
Okay.
And that's a fixed location. I don't get to move that in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah. Cause you got to follow the truss layout.
Yeah. And look where the end of that wall is in relation to the island.
Yep. It's offset from the center of your.
There you go. So
Oh,
that's what I was
man.
just talking about. And if
Ah, yeah,
if
we're talking
somebody
right
had
now.
if somebody had the foresight to look at that and go, uh-oh, that's going to be a doubler through there. We're never going to be able to get that vent up through the ceiling, then we probably would have been able to get around it. But we didn't have the foresight. It wasn't until we rolled the trusses that I realized, uh-oh, this is going to
You know,
happen.
a thoughtful truss designer would would take your plans, overlay his on top, and send them back to you where you could see the conflicts.
It would be nice. It
Yeah, then
would be
you go
really
like,
nice.
"Whoa, I got this quad right over top of where my vent goes."
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
you want to go
Other
to the
than
next
that, I
page?
got to tell you, I built a couple other houses by this guy, and the houses always have this great feel to him. He has a real good sense of flow. I
That's
don't know
good.
any other way to explain it.
That's good. So, yeah, when I first saw a set of these, like either floor joists or whatever, when I see all these dashed lines or dotted or whatever lines, this
Yep.
is probably your floor system on your crawl space, I guess.
Hmm.
But um, I'm like, you don't have to actually draw those, but I'll do it because I'll put the toilets where they go, like the first
Hmm.
floor toilets. You'll see them here
Hmm.
on mine, just so that oh, it's really close to that joist. You may have to move that.
Yeah.
But this seems busy to me because it's like I gotta go in and really check and make sure.
Yeah.
So
It
that's
is
just,
busy.
yeah, it's a style thing. That's,
And
you
this is
know,
one of the, this would be another one of my pet peeves. You know, we still have the issue with the text. It's all clumped together. I don't know if spacing on the text is something he's forced to deal with when he's doing this, or if it's something that
I'm
you have in properties.
I'm gonna zoom in. It depends on what you do. You can make your text any size you want. I want mine to be um, 3 30 seconds on the printed page. So it's usually 4.5 inches on quarter-inch scale.
Yeah. So for spacing, I wouldn't put doors. I don't know why the door swings are shown on the foundation plan. I don't
Yes.
understand that.
Okay. Yeah, exactly.
I would do wall lines with no door swings, but then I would put the like the washer, the toilets, the front, the sink, anything that
All the
was going to
plumbing
be,
stuff.
yeah,
Yep.
all the plumbing stuff, exactly. And then like over here where he's got the little benchmark for his details, right? His benchmark for his details. But the way these are laid out, they allow those dotted lines to run right through the text, and it's so hard to read. You know, specifically this crawl space one is a great example where it says crawl space, and you just got a line right through the middle of it.
Yep. So you can actually click on your text, bring it to the front, and have it have a fill. He's
Hmm.
put a shadow on his. So I don't know. He's probably using soft plan. But you put it on a fill and it'll be above this line, and then this line will just stop, and then
Yeah,
you'll start again over here
yeah. Another one is when it's the line goes
like
right across
this.
the top of a word. Yeah, look at that.
It's
If
almost
the
like
line goes right across the
hang
top of a
joist.
word,
Nope, he lined it out, so we're not hanging joist.
we're not we're not hanging joints. No, when it
Yep.
goes right along the top of a word or under the bottom of a word, for some reason my brain won't let me
Well,
process that
like
word.
here, concrete.
Yeah,
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 that's frustrating.
yeah. Yeah, and I don't know why when I look at it, I'm like, oh, what does that say? I don't know what that's about. But this that little bog is frustrating, right?
Yeah, I just don't get artsy. I don't. I mean, garage footing detail. Make it all the same damn font. Clear.
Yeah.
You can make it bigger.
I,
Go ahead,
I
but
think
make
you
it.
could just call it detail C.
You
You don't
could.
even have to name it
Yeah.
because you're going to go over to your benchmark and you're going to look for your detail anyhow. And your detail is going to know which drawing you got to go look at.
A lot of engineers, they'll have all their details permanently labeled like detail 21, 22, 23, and it's always 23
Hmm.
ever. If you're ever going to use that kind of thing, it's number 23. They don't care that
Hmm.
it's in sequence or anything, and they don't label it. You'll just
Yeah.
have it'll be like,
I was hoping we get to this because I worked on a construction project for Homestead on the waterfront, and it was a mixed commercial project. So it had steel, wood, concrete. So I had to work with at least three or four different disciplines, and the plans reflected like how each of those disciplines thought. And I was so impressed when I looked at the metal work. And I don't know why it's so specific for metal, but they have what they call the shopping cart up at the top, and it listed all the material. That was the top right corner, all the material they were going to use. And all the material is numbered, and all every number refers to its part in the drawing. And then in the drawing, everything was marked with a benchmark for a detail, section. And
mhm.
all of those referred this storyline at the bottom. I'll call it a storyline. You call it a film strip or whatever. But it was two stacked boxes, and there was like 12 of them along the bottom. And they were all numbered left to right: one, two, three, four, 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A. And if you looked up at your material list and you saw item number 12, and you looked for item number 12 and it said detail 1A, and you went to detail 1A, it told you exactly how to build that.
Oh
And it
man.
was the cleanest layout I had ever seen. And I thought, man, if there was a way that everybody could do their plans this way, that would be the
Yeah.
bomb.
Yeah. That
So
sounds
I think you're
awesome.
right. I think if you call it detail 22 and you always know it's going to be a 2 foot wall with a 16-inch footing, and you know it's always going to be on the exterior and it's always going to have the pipe and the fabric, then why not just leave it to 22?
Yeah, well,
Then
so
every
your local engineer up there, I'm not advertising for anybody, but you know who I'm talking about.
uh-huh.
That's their pages. When they refer to it, they'll put a whole page of details up there, and they've got like it's a grid pattern, and they'll have like 20 to 25 details,
Hmm.
and they don't all apply to the job, but they're all
Mm-mm.
there so that you can call what you want. And if he was smart, he would delete the ones that aren't even relevant.
Well,
but
the
he
other day I
sometimes.
opened up an engineering planet that had the wrong foundation in it.
Oh no.
He apologized, but
We're talking the same guy because I'll tell you what
yeah.
happened. He hired a bunch of young guys, and I wanted a 12-foot wide stick framed little garage, 5 and 12,
Uh,
and the joist. It was typical joist on top of a standard height wall, and then 5 and 12 rafters, 2x8. They wanted 4-inch bolts lagged through on from the joist to the rafter and from the rafter to the joist, and I went 1/4 inch lags. No one has ever done that in the history of framing. Well, we would prefer it, and so I sent them the code. 2 nails front nail, 2 nails back nail, 2 nails toe nailed from the joist to the
mhm.
plate, and then two from the rafter to the plate. And they have to be a certain diameter and length of nail, and it's all prescriptive. Well, we would prefer the screws. I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, so you're not the guy that it's named after. You're some new guy, and
Mhm.
on paper it looks scary. It's 12 feet.
Oh my
It's
word.
it's a 12-foot single car garage. So I'm like, okay, so I
Yeah.
until those guys get smart, I don't recommend them anymore.
Or ambitious.
Yeah, something. Get hungry.
Yeah.
Do this stuff.
Yeah.
Let's
I got story after story on that one. Okay, so here's where the rubber hits the road. See that floor framing for the lower
hmm
floor, upper floor framing?
Yeah.
We have mixed materials here. So the trusses
That's
are
how they did
laminated.
this. Okay, so
Yep.
they did attic trusses, and then you switched into girders,
Yep.
and you joisted front to back, and then you had to frame walls
Yep.
that then you had to put actual rafters to match the top plate of the attic trusses.
Yep. Well, we had to do fill framing where there wasn't any truss. So, when you put this together and you start nailing everything, you start to realize where your open spaces are. And you were talking about it a minute ago where you said I put in a stick framed roof, and then I tell them if you go to an engineer, you're gonna have to go per the engineering that's delivered by the third party, yada yada.
Yeah.
The thing that nobody, well, maybe we're just so used to doing it we don't think about it, but the thing that you learn in construction when you're building trusses is that you have to overfill where they don't provide a truss. And if you
Yep.
have mono trusses that are tying into a beam or an existing roof, you could have an overfill that's a third of the house easily. And,
Yeah,
you might as
and
well just frame the whole house. But
they don't even tell you how to overframe. They just tell you a
no,
cloud overframe
yep,
this. So you
yep,
could actually be adding weird loads to the framing by adding your framing on top of their truss.
yep. Initially, when we were doing overfills, we didn't have any interior bracing. And then pretty soon, the inspectors started to catch up on the fact that there was no engineering for the overfills, and they pushed back on the third party. So then we had our overfills had interior bracing that had to land on a truss below, which meant that the truss below had to be able to absorb the impact of all of the bearing coming down. So
Uh,
yeah, so then our web bracing changed. It's just like a whole nest of things that you
yeah.
just have to deal with, when you get into trusses. But on
Wow.
yeah, on this here where those girders are, some of those girders are 2 lam, some of them are 4 ply, and the bottoms are flat, but because it's nominal material, the top of the truss is not flat. Each of the laminates might be a 1/4 inch off one to the other,
Oh
but the
no.
bottoms are flat, right?
Because they
So the
don't,
ceiling
yeah,
below is
in their mind, bottoms should be flat because even if they're like a web truss, they don't care how tall it goes because it's
right.
inside of the web. And
Yeah.
that mentality might have carried over. They didn't rip them down all exact.
Nope. They just put the nominal lumber in there, and everybody knows if you get a load of 2x10s, they're not all the same. If you
Yep.
get 2x8s, for some reason, 2x8s are really consistent. They're always like 7 1/4, 7 3/8.
Yep.
But you get into 2x10s and 2x12s, man, they can vary up to a 1/4 of an inch.
Well, I've seen like it says here 9.5.
Hmm.
I've seen 9 1/8 to 9.5
Yeah.
on that. Same thing with the 2x12s. And I don't know if it's just because it dries and shrinks or if it was cut wrong, but everything
Yeah.
in my world that I do on a computer, I assume it's a quarter. It's
Yeah.
always something in a
Yeah.
quarter.
And you would prepare for this too, because you'd be thinking through your material when you're
Oh,
framing.
dude. Now that I know SketchUp, I
Yeah.
would have right here where these girders sit are on whatever this standard height plate is.
Hmm.
And then right next to it, I'm running studs up as a balloon frame all the way up to it creates a double plate that lines up with the bird's mouth of what these rafters would have. So
Hmm.
you'd have balloon frame wall here, balloon frame wall here,
Hmm.
same over here, and then fire block, and then joist and subfloor and rafter, and then those tops of those rafters, you better have thought that out to where they all plane.
Hmm.
And then the ridge, I'm not really. I guess you would put a saddle hanger, like some kind of hanger on the whatever one of these attic trusses, probably this girder, and then run a ridge across to this one so that you could have your rafters sit on it. I guess.
Hmm. You have to get approval from the third party for that. So they give you a detail of how that actually goes together in your trust plan. And I
The
don't have
actual
that. Otherwise, we could take a look at it.
the truss vendor has to tell you it's okay to do that.
Yeah, because
But
if you put a point load like a ridge or something, if you nail a hanger to a truss and you add load to that ply on that side, you're not like pushing everything on the top, right? You're putting it on the side of the truss. So now you're not all the trusses are about uniform load, the 40 pounds per square feet or whatever, 100 pounds per square foot for that top cord is uniform on the top of the cord, not on the side of the cord. We're not hanging the snow from the side. It's all on the top, right?
okay,
So if you roll up that attic truss and you put a ridge in from one attic truss to the other, the two interior plies are subject to that ridge. So now it's trying to pull the tops of those trusses in
so you
effectively.
can't through bolt and toughen those things up, or
You can, but they have to give you approval.
so my
They have to
question
show
would
you
be
how to do
this:
it.
if I'm a trust company and I'm asked to build your roof, they didn't completely do your roof. They did what
No.
they thought they could, and then they said, "Good luck." But
Yep.
so they didn't even run a ridge in there just to see what it would take to make that girder hold that's on you to
No.
figure out.
Yeah. If you do ladder bracing or anything like that, it has to be approved by the third party. You have to get the trust that can actually, be assigned that load.
Ah, that's just wrong, dude.
That's tough. It's you get used to it. It's one of these.
Because you could have just said, screw all these trusses and all these
Yep.
trusses and balloon framed both of these walls
Yep.
and joisted it and then
Yep.
roofed it and be done.
Yep. 100%.
And it would be
It's
done
the
in like
illusion of
two
convenience.
days, 2 days or less. And so your
Hmm.
labor for this is a lot of labor to tie all this shit together. And you're
Yeah.
waiting on them to give you answers.
Yeah. This roof is like a 2 week roof, maybe 3 week. It might have
Ah,
been a 3 week roof.
I've never spent more than 5 days on a roof, maybe.
Yeah.
It
Well,
just depends. Like,
some of it's relative to the fact that you're building the floor and the rest of the roof at the same time because you have to roll the trusses,
yeah,
brace
that's
them
true.
off, block them out, sheet them.
So
So
when
it's
you
maybe
add
not
up
fair to call it
everything,
a 3 foot or 3 week,
how
but
how expensive are these trusses? Because I'm sure they're like 300 or 400 bucks a piece. Because they're an attic truss, they're probably more than that.
yeah. Well, this is pre-COVID, so 5 years ago, and I would have to look, but the trust bid was about 12 grand,
Okay,
and I think you could have got all the material and labor for 12 grand to build this roof because it's not that complicated.
it's not at all. These are all gable end,
Yeah,
same common rafter the whole way.
yeah. So at the end of the steps on both sides there, you can see there's like a unique space. See at the end of the steps, that's where my lamin for the stairs, no, the interior stairwell.
Oh,
There
the
you go.
inside, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so that's that beam that's that glue lam, the plied truss thing at the end of the stairwell we were talking about for my um,
for these
vent off the
trusses,
island. But
yeah,
then there's another beam back here that's holding the floor system, and then there's like this 3 foot no man's land that gets framed in. So we
yeah.
actually
And
have 2 by 10 rafters there on a
is there
spring wall at the both ends.
is there any use in this room? Can you use this space
Yeah,
upstairs?
I used it as a closet, and that's why we're going
Okay,
to talk about the bearing point there in a little bit.
okay. Oh, right here.
It's inside. You'll see it when we get a little farther along here.
All right, let's go to this page. Here's
So
your
see that bearing point off the stairwell there
bearing. This one.
to the right, a little
Oh,
farther.
this
There
one.
you go.
Whoa, this is out in the middle of the fucking room. Like
Yeah,
downstairs. That's over where your kitchen is.
yeah. It's so what's happening here is we have a bearing point going down onto uh, a 4 or 5 ply attic truss, and I know it's coming from the top down. I understand that, so the truss should be rated for it. But what's happening is because those plies are not uniform on the top cord, the floor on the stairwell side of that is actually letting the wall settle. So I have a drywall crack and a door that won't close now because that bearing point is settling itself down onto the truss. Yeah, it's a great frustration, and it's one of those things. I had an idea it might happen when I was talking to the framer, and I asked him if he could plane just that one truss, just plane it down so that floor and that area on both sides would be flush, and I wouldn't have to deal with any situations with spanning plywood over some uneven surface, which is what we're dealing with because now I have this point load that's going on this plywood that's not supported by the truss below because there's nothing there.
Yeah.
It's 3/8 of an inch higher on one side than the other. But I'm really experiencing some settling because of everything that's there.
Yeah. Let's go over there. Wow.
Yeah. So that's the I mean, if there was anything that I mean, I would rather stick frame anyhow. But if there's anything that made me think this is a waste of time, it's stuff like this. You're forced into a situation where you have to build this way because of what you're building with,
Yeah.
and you can't control all this stuff. And it's the I'll go back to it again. The illusion of convenience is what we're dealing with here.
A lot of
And
builders are trapped in that because they don't
yeah,
even want to talk. They don't understand stick framing, and they trust that the truss guys are always right. And
right,
I've seen trusses come out wrong, and
right.
I don't know how they got wrong, but they're not quite right. But framer
I
just
got
makes it
trusses for
work.
somebody else's house the other day.
What? And they're
Yes.
not right.
No, they were for someone else's house.
Oh,
They weren't even
oh,
for my job.
wow.
I know. So
You're
see
like,
how we have a
stop, stop,
continuous ridge
don't.
here?
Yeah. Yes, that's why I was asking. Your house has a continuous ridge. When it's all said and done, looking from the street, you see it.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
the truss guy should be responsible for whatever it takes to make that happen. He's the
Yeah.
roof guy.
Well, that's the reason we wound up with an 812 roof. Initially, he had it at a 7.5, 12 or something. So all four of these ridges came together on the main roof to
Oh, I
make a
gotcha. Yeah,
yeah.
right here.
Yeah, and I don't like that because the roofing doesn't work out when you make those ridges all come together at the same
You
place.
can't, it's hard to flash that. You almost have to put a little cupola thing on there just to help it drain correctly.
Yeah, I think that's why they're there is because that's impossible to weatherproof that thing.
Yep.
So that's where the 812 came from. I was like, you got to prop that up a little bit. Everything's got to kind of die into the roof. You can't. I don't want to have the other.
Yep.
So, but because of that, we could have just taken a 20-inch glue lamp, run it from end to end, span the entire roof. Then we could have
Oh,
taken right. It would have
did
been
you help
easy.
me? Were we working together in that garage that we remodeled over there near the Mercedes project?
Yes.
And we put that, I spec'd a beam for the first time in my life. I said
Yeah.
24 inch by five
That's
and a
where I
half
met
inch.
Peter.
Okay. Yeah. And it
That was
was
kind
like
of a lime
30.
greenhouse, right?
I don't remember the color. I just know that they wanted
Yeah.
it open above their garage. And so we put in this massive freaking beam. And I told Chris, I said, I don't know if it's going to work, but it's the biggest beam I've ever actually put into a house. And so I'm pretty sure it's going to work.
Should be
And
fine.
yeah, and it flew. I mean, I don't even remember how we got it up there, if we craned it or whatever. But we even changed out the garage header so that it could hold the load out to the sides, and then we made sure the concrete was correct. So
Hmm.
we actually did it right. But yeah, man, this would have been. I'm just looking at this going, I would even talk the customer into 16-inch on center. I would just be like, look, do it. You're going to be happy that your roof doesn't have
Hmm.
any, because either go with 5/8 plywood so it doesn't sag, or put extra rafters in. Just do it.
Hmm. I would do the extra rafters. I always do extra floor joists because I like a floor that has some spring to it. I don't like a floor that's deflecting.
Okay.
So I like the 16-inch layout for flooring as well. I'd rather do that. The other thing about going 16-inch on your layout is that your studs land on your joists.
Yes.
So your studs land on your joists. If you're stick framing your roof, your rafters land on your studs, which land on your joists, which brings like a true
Stack frame.
line of support all the way
Yep.
to the foundation.
Uh,
You know.
I I have the highest respect for Tim Mueller. He's over here in Gig Harbor, and he's going down the path of more efficiency, more whatever, save the trees kind of thing. So
Hmm.
he does like 2 foot on center, sometimes the walls, the floor system, and the rafters. And he's also a proponent of that plywood that has the bonded 1 inch foam on it, like Zip R6.
Oh, yeah.
And they've mandated that here, but there's a lot of jurisdictions that aren't enforcing it. They're like, no, we don't see how we're getting our shear with a nail going through an inch of foam.
Hmm.
And that's supposed to cake the plywood, supposed to stay all stiffy. Uh-uh.
Hmm.
So yeah, Marysville, I got a couple houses there and they're like, yeah, it's part of the energy code to
Yep.
have that.
A
And they're like,
continuous insulation.
exactly. And so they'll be like, well, we're going to go ahead and approve you, but you don't have to. You can put your plywood straight on the. So I'm like, oh, okay, sure.
Mm.
Local jurisdiction, you got the power.
Hmm.
So are
Curious.
we going here? Oh,
Yeah.
good.
This is actually one of my favorite pages because it's so easy to read. This is kind of bringing everything together. This is what we've been talking about the whole time. Nice and
Yeah.
clean. Don't have any fodder. There's no crap that you have to deal with. You can actually see what you're looking for. Be nice if it was a little bit bigger, but this is the kind of thing that I think everything needs to be. It needs to look more like this.
Yeah, it's nice. Uh, I'm kind of a freak when I do my stairs. I tend to include the entire how to cut the stairs kind of thing. I'll look that up real quick because I just want to brag a little sometimes. I don't always get the chance.
Well, you should because it's great detail.
As soon as let's see, we'll find this guy's. This is the actual plan that has been stamped and certified. And he did a bunch of stuff in the front, but yeah, let's do. This guy was amazing. This is one of the most amazing clients I've ever worked with. He did all the research, did all the drawings. He'd made everything like even 2 feet or 4 feet to a window so that all his plywood would shear. The guy's he just thinks things through. But here's what I do on stairs is I'll just do the whole calculation so that you can do everything. And what really the best part of this story, I got a YouTube video on it. If I in theoretical world, 9 foot 6 1/4 is floor to floor. I got out there. He wants me to build the stairs before we did the rest of the house because he didn't want a big open hole that people could fall down. So I've never built stairs that stop and go into nothing. So that was
Hmm.
fun because I had to build walls and then had to do that. But it's the same concept. It's just there was no floor to tie into. I get up there, I'm running the laser and I measure before I even cut all this, and it's exactly 9 6 1/4. And I'm like,
Hmm.
holy crap, I get to use all these numbers. I don't have to recalculate nothing.
Yeah,
So
that's a great feeling.
yeah, I did that, did the riser count. There's it ends up being 16 risers at 7 1/8. And then for me to figure out my platform height is the 11th one. So I start counting here and I come up and it's 6 6 9/16 to the top of that. You subtract uh, subfloor. There's your framing. So that's how I do it. And then I do fire
Hmm.
blocks. I did this when we did apartments was we had to do elevators. Well, they're like an elevator shaft around the stairwell so that they're fireproof. And there is a bunch of blocking that goes into commercial stairs.
Mm.
So 12-inch on center, like say a 4-story building, your
Hmm.
downstairs is all 12-inch on center. So there's those blocks. And you use this degree right here, 30.7 in your chop saw.
Hmm.
But anyway, so that was just that. So when I see this, I go, where's the rest of it? Like,
Yeah.
he's not done.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you zoom in on that.
I think you got triggered.
I'm sorry. I just saw those stairs. So I'm getting up there in age. I'm not that old yet, but I don't want to do the framing that's bent over and nailing walls and
No.
stuff all day long because my back's not there anymore. It's a young man's thing. But I love the roof. I love the stairs. And I like anything that's kind of, you have to stop and go, wait a second, take
Hmm.
some thinking. Can't go 100 miles an hour.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I was on the roof for the same reason.
Yep.
We
So
were
that's,
talking earlier about when you started. So as a manager, what I discovered was I wouldn't let anybody measure until they knew how to cut. So I was always on the roof shouting out measurements to people that had to cut it for me. And I found that when I finally had someone go on the roof or go frame a wall or do whatever they had to do, if I told them how I wanted it cut, they started to think the way I talked to them. So then I knew with confidence that when they were out on the floor or up on the roof, they were going to do what I asked them to do. I didn't have to work on that. And
oh,
a
that's
lot of
awesome.
people, yeah, a lot of people want to sit on the saw and yell at them on how to measure so that they can cut what they want to cut because they know the area they're working in. And I found no success in that, I guess, for
No,
myself. So I was
because you
like,
put a
that's
lot of
it.
stress, you put stress on that guy and he's not sure what you want. And now you're just getting more angry because he's not
Yeah,
measuring. And so, yeah, you have to let that go when you're on the ground.
you have to
You,
let that go. That's right. He's up there
because
measuring, you cut for him.
that's, I mean, I'm so happy you said that because my son's been working with me for a while and I've had him do all the cutting and I show him, here's the shadow line, bring the blade down. And so he's super good on a chop saw. And
Hmm.
he kind of okay with a skill saw because it's scary. You know that
Hmm.
you got to be the master of that saw. You can't let it go wherever it wants. And he also likes the track saw. And yeah, so now I need him next to me so I can show him what I'm measuring and why I'm doing it. Because a lot of time, you know how it is. Sometimes you get a long to short across the board because the only way you can measure, and then you're like, okay, so that's 3/4 thick, so I got to add 3/4 to that, and you
Hmm.
do a little thing, and then you tell them, okay, long to long, I want this, and in your head you even add just a smidge, just in case it
Hmm.
has to be trimmed, if it's
Yep.
really needing to be tight.
Yep. Just in case. That's right. I know we could get into a whole other video of how to hold tools.
So I've never created a page like this. I don't,
I don't know there's a reason for it.
yeah, I don't need, I just tell them, hey, it's either egress or not. I don't spec the number of lights in the glass, none of that.
Yep.
So that was an
I think this
interesting
is it's
last
a
page.
symptom of somebody who has a template that they use. They pull their template up, they start filling in all the details, the template populates, the information comes together.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much modifying or finessing. It's just done and off you go, you know.
So
That's what I
we
think that page is.
we're coming up on 2 hours, but so let's
Hmm.
go through the speed. Let's do this speed thing. You ready? Let's talk about a
Oh,
little bit about each one of these. I'm gonna sort these by name and get your opinion on them. So this is the first one. You've always talked about wanting 3.0 doors everywhere.
yeah.
So if somebody fought you on that, you could convince them, go ahead and build the 3.0 door. And then if you want it smaller, fur in whatever you got to fur in to get that smaller door. But as designers, builders, whatever, anybody who's listening to my voice, put 3.0 doors everywhere
Everywhere. Yes.
because you're not going to spend a lot. I think, what did you say? $120?
In my
Or
house, it was $120 additional to move all my doors up to 3.0.
yeah. So that's not a lot of money. And what it is wheelchairs go through there and their hands clear so you don't
Hmm.
get pinched. Because
Hmm.
my house is a bunch of 32-inch doors, these 2/8s, and
Yeah.
all my
The other
trim
thing
is
that
scraped.
the other thing on a 3.0 door is they're very rarely all the way open. So damage on the walls, having door stops, that kind of stuff, it goes
Mhm.
away. It's a quieter life. The door's not slamming up against the wall all the time.
There you go. So there's that one. Let's go to this. If you look directly above, so here's this one. This was my best man at my wedding. We used a picture of Texas and traced it out on plywood
Uh-huh.
and we cut it out and then we put blocking all the way along and then we cut another piece in the back with just the drawing and this is what it became. Let's see if I can bring this over here. And when he was done, the mud guy just came in with some mesh, some
Hmm.
screen, and then he mudded it and then they put in crinkle paint, so it looked like it was peeled black paint that was coming off the ceiling.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, and this is actually oriented on the ground. The only problem is it's upside down because you're looking up, and this would be if you were looking down from the sky.
Oh
But
yeah.
if we oriented it correctly, it would look backwards in the ceiling, and people would be like, "Oh, your Texas is backwards."
Yeah, your Texas is backwards. That's a lot of
But
blocking in there.
yeah, but we did. We used a narrow crown stapler. So now this is something that people need to know about, and that is anytime you have angled walls, you have automatic niches.
Hmm.
There's that. Let's go to here.
I'll go
This
back to
is
that one.
okay.
Can you zoom in a little farther?
Yeah, let me open it up with preview and get you everything you need. Does this go full screen? I put these pictures together just to have something in case we didn't know what we were going to talk about.
Yeah. What I like about this though is you have let's see, there's one, two, three, four, five, six. You have six corners in there, two 45s. You're mirroring all these walls. And I think the thing that I find fascinating when I'm laying a wall out, I used to lay all my plates out first on the floor, everywhere, all my
Mm.
plates out. I would lay all my walls out, I'd lay all my doors out on my plate, and then make a list of parts. So in an area like this where I have like six or seven corners coming together,
Yeah.
I'm thinking about all of my plate, how it's coming together, what it's going to land on, what it's going to get nailed to, how I'm going to hold the drywall, like how am I going to fill in those voids so I don't have drywall issues, all my backings in place. And then finally, you got your double plate. So how is your double plate going to facilitate some of the decisions you make when you put your parts together? And
Yep.
everybody cheats when you get into something like this. You're hoping that you can put out an inch and a half and nail a plate on it. It's not going to roll over. It's not going to fall. You know, we all cheat when it comes to
Yep.
stuff like this. So,
So this is a mitered top and bottom. This one
yeah,
is overlap on the top.
yeah,
So it might have just been a hot day and we just said, screw it. I don't know. I
yeah.
couldn't tell you
I
how
think
we did
that's,
that.
yeah, that's what we're talking about. That mitered one is what caught my attention
Yep.
because I would have done, you know, a 45, 45. They would have lapped over. We had a big chunk of meat to nail into.
Yep.
And to get those studs so that they lay out correctly, I would have done a doubler on that outside and then probably a couple of 45s so that I knew that my doubler was going to hold that whole thing together.
And
You
this would
know,
never come apart.
it would never come apart.
Yep.
Never, ever.
Yeah. This is
Yeah.
standard Texas 2x4s. So they're kind of nasty.
Oh,
It's
they try to
just
crawl
how,
back to the lumber yard.
yeah. They cut them off the edge of the tree. Um, this is the way I like to do my details now is just a list because it used to be I would annotate everything, and I've seen some really busy annotated
Yeah, we just looked
details.
at one.
And so
See,
to me,
this is wonderful.
I want to have a lot of information, but I don't have room over here to do it. So look how much information number one is.
Hmm.
It's everything I can think of. And so this is my new technique. I do this now because I I'm looking at this and I go, oh, what is this? 8. Oh, okay. So 16D plate nailing. Okay. And I totally can understand what's happening on 8 there and 8 there.
Hmm. Hmm. And eight
So
is eight everywhere you go, right?
yeah, 8 is this plate, same nailing as this plate.
Hmm.
Yeah. So wherever they're the same thing, they get, they just get that same number,
Yeah.
6 and 6, 7
Yeah.
and 7. So yeah, and that's just, I think it just makes more sense.
100%. This is just about referencing the information you need.
Yep. Here's how you can tell somebody, hey, if you're getting paid this, yeah, I don't know why that's in here, but anyways, it's like, there you go, $20 an hour. Here's what you get. I want to talk here about a house. These people had a $70,000 budget to fix this house up.
Hmm.
And in fact, I should start actually with right here. No, I'm going to do it this way. I'm doing the space bar because we're on a Mac and Macs are cool.
Hmm.
They wanted 70 grand, and their big thing was they wanted to have a new kitchen. And I'm
Mm.
thinking to myself, I looked right at the real estate lady and I said, no, you
Yeah,
need to
no.
tell them there's so many errors here. Do you see where this beam is going right through this window trim?
Hmm.
Yeah, they trimmed around that. This deck nobody walks on this deck. I broke the police tape because I walked up there, and as I was walking, the whole thing was wanting to come loose of
Oh yeah. Looks like it's
this.
going to fall over.
Yeah. So here's how bad it is. How am I back to that one already? Oh yeah. Here's this is what's holding up part of this thing.
Mm.
It's just it's just really sad. So I told her, I said, you need to have this lady understand that she's gonna be spending her money on her back deck and
Hmm.
maybe have enough for that. They got
No,
mad.
she's
They
not
didn't.
going to have any money left over.
This was leaning 6 inches towards the right. Let me hit this again. When you can't really tell, but it came up and then it just started tilting this way. And I was like, hey, this needs to go away. You're not using it anymore. Because if that falls down, it's coming right into your dining room table,
Hmm.
stuff like that. And I know you run into this stuff too. New, scrabbed onto old. These are 2x4s
Hmm.
on some crazy wide
Yeah,
level.
32-inch or something.
Yep. And then they used to be cedar shake because you can tell because of
Yep.
all these. So we built things different back then.
Yes, we did.
But I want to show you this too. So my landscaper, Sergio,
Uh-huh.
he came over to check this out. They were going to have a ramp because these people are getting a little older. And I told the builder, I said, hey, Sergio can make this look beautiful. There's what Sergio did.
Hmm.
I
Yep.
mean, it's everything's level. It's perfect. It doesn't settle. His guys are
Hmm.
just awesome. They use sand and it's all the right way. All these are just the front edge and it's
Yeah,
compacted sand.
indeed. That's a
Um,
huge improvement.
yeah. So up in Canada, I was, let me see if I got a better picture of that. There's some of the stuff we did. Oh yeah, this is that Mercedes job where we did the raised ceilings. If you stick
Hmm.
frame a building, you can have all kinds of awesome ceiling options.
Hmm.
I don't know if you were, I think you were part of this. This was the Mount Baker Sunroom Edition, maybe, where
No, I wasn't a part of that.
there was snow on the ground and we kept our cold drinks in the snow until lunch. But the best part about this is if you look, it's all new here and this is existing.
Yeah.
Look at that. This is Peter Klutwick. I gave
Yep.
his full name. He is, oh man, this whole managing this is weird. He is the guy that made this look awesome. He tied each, these are actual cedar shakes that were dipped to match this
Hmm.
color, and you can't tell
Yeah.
it.
That's
And so,
incredible.
yeah, that was him. He totally pulled that one off, and it was like, man, dude. So there's people with skills. We did this deck on the back, turned out real nice. But like this is example of framing in Memphis.
Hmm.
And this guy hired me, and he had a crew of like 18 guys. Most of them,
Hmm.
the lead guys were legal. I don't know about the rest of them, but we framed this from slab to where the cornice crew showed up in 4 days.
Hmm.
And all this I calculated. And so when I showed up and they were on the ground, I told him and he told his lead guy, I said, hey, you just have to match the plans. So if you build a wall, it has to be exact. You can't just say, oh, close enough. And I said, you
Hmm.
don't get to follow the foundation. If the foundation guy's wrong, you follow the plan.
Hmm.
And so when it got to that point, they gave me their best roof cutter and him and I cut and cut and cut and cut. And by the time they were joisting and ready to put rafters up, we had stuff stacked all over this property. And
Hmm.
this is how it is. It's always dirty like this. But they started pulling stuff up, and it was amazing because the lead guy, his name was Elvis, and he goes, "How are you getting all this to just work like this?"
Hmm.
I said,
Yeah,
"You lay
exactly.
it out how I tell you, and it works." And he was so
Yes.
impressed. He was like, "Holy cow!" So that guy was impressed that it only took 4 days because now he's on to another project, making more
Yeah.
money. But yeah, it was fun. I That was back in the days when we could flex. Um, That's Lummi Island. That's another Lindell.
Mm.
Um, I'm just, let's see. This, I didn't do this, but this is how we did it. This was in a different house in Memphis, but this is how we did this sort of thing. Except, well, we did it like this, but I did one with an octagon. I took a 4x4 post and I ripped it into an octagon shape
Hmm.
so that each one of the mains that comes in was the same exact length on 8 sides. And I just thought it made it seem stronger because I could run that 4x4 up above and then tie it between two joists and beam it over to the sides. And then that way it's not just being pushed together that's supporting it. It's actually supported across and loaded down just because I just thought it was better. I don't
No, I
know.
think that's the right way to do it. I remember doing a roof like that. It wasn't a round roof, but it was maybe 7 sides before it tied into the house. And I'll say this out loud, even though I think it's going to come out very terrible. But in my mind, I realized that if I did a 90 and it was a 45, that'd be half of the 90. And if you did half of a 45, it's 22.5, right? You do all this half, half, half. But when you get into the situation where you're going beyond the 90 degrees, you start adding in 22 and a half degrees to 90 degrees, and it gives you the 112 or whatever. That's actually the degree of the next cut. And when I realized that, and I don't know if I'm telling you the right numbers, but when I realized that, I found out that I could sit on the ground and I knew where I was in that roof and what bevel I was going to be cutting. So then I knew the backside of a 112 and I cut that on there, throw it up to Fred, and sure enough, it would just drop right in there.
I
And
love
when you
that.
said, yeah, when you said that about those four, and I'm looking at the four that are going to tie into those four, I remembered that. And I remember thinking to myself, that is so amazing. Because one of the things I think, if you really love framing, when you cut a back bevel and you throw it up against the beam and you drive a nail in it, and everything's going where it's supposed to go, but that bevel is like just tight as a drum, that's money. That's the thing you want to do every day.
Yep. Let's see if you can see it here. I don't think you can see it there. I'll tell you what, we're going to do this again sometime, and I'll actually open up SketchUp and we can fly around in 3D.
Yeah.
Um, Chief Architect can't do what SketchUp can do, but SketchUp can't do what Chief Architect does. So if anybody wants to go to my website, there it is, paracad.com, but you can look at some of the stuff. And
Everybody should go to your website.
I just want to help people. So if you, I'm not an architect, okay? So I don't have that overall encompassing way of building a perfect glove to fit your hand.
Hmm.
But I am a licensed designer. And so to me, though, I want the building to be built correctly with
Hmm.
least amount of headaches and really strong. I loved helping on this.
Hmm.
The builder called me and said, "Hey, you want to come out?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I cut
Hmm.
all this stuff. I even laid out the valleys because I thought, there's got to be a way you can do that. And the only headache was this is 3.5 wide, so I had to think about how that planes and then subtract the right amount, and then it's a diagonal on a hip diagonal.
Hmm.
So I started laying them all out, and the only mistake I made, if you look on this side, I put a hip cut angle, and it's actually a plumb cut. It's actually a plumb cut at that point. It's plumb
Hmm.
up here. It's plumb up there. But yeah, cut them all. I told these. They said, um, well, how do we put these in? I said, you need to plane along the top to the center of the valley because it was just flat. I didn't cut a V notch in it.
Hmm.
And so they did. I said, how much? And they said, it's looking like it's a half inch. And so they did. And then it lined up right with my pencil mark. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, that's so awesome.
Yeah. It's money. Oh.
Yeah. I love
All
that
right.
stuff. Yeah. We're at the time. So
Yeah.
I'll process this video. I don't know if anybody's going to watch it all the way to the end. When I get rich and famous, I'm going to wait to the very last like 30 seconds and I'm going to say, if you stayed this long, dial this number in and you'll get money. I'm just going to do it. But
Sweet.
yeah, this is the one that you and I worked on. And that's the framing we shot earlier. This is it finished.
That's awesome.
And there it is actually complete. And I didn't colorize this. I didn't, because you look, the trees are not really green.
Yeah.
This
It's
house
just the way
just
it looks.
pops. Yeah, it just
Sweet.
pops.
All right. Well, thanks for doing this, Mike. I appreciate it. It's been
Uh,
great.
I've had fun. I'd like to do this like once a month or whenever because today we just kind of shotgunned it, but
Hmm.
there's a lot that you and I talk about every so often that I think people might find valuable. And I just want to build a resource library for people. So maybe we talk about, well, my only skill is framing. I can give you my opinion on everything else, but
Yeah.
you have a real passion for getting people to process. And I
Yes.
know you've had to butt heads with people. You
Yes.
go in and work with someone and they don't see your vision. So maybe we should clearly define your vision and show where all of it, 90% of people, bottom line is how much going to cost.
Hmm.
So if that's their focus and if time is money, then we can show them, hey, you spend here, but you save here.
Yeah.
If you don't spend here, you're going to not save there.
That's right.
So there you go, man. That's it. I'll let you go. It's been fun. It went by really fast for me.
Yeah.
So I
All
will,
right. Have a great night.
yeah, you too. Thanks for doing
Bye.
this. Bye.
You bet. Thank you.